Welcome everyone to the Breakthrough Leadership YouTube channel, and I'm Matt DeYoung, and this is Greg Yates.
Hello.
And today is Season 1, Episode 2 of our video podcast here. And the title of today's video podcast is How to Create Change as a Leader in 60 Seconds or Less. This is pretty bold, this is pretty big.
I'm ready to create some change.
Let's create some change.
Roll.
So I think how this all started was this big question, which is, what if the current focus that you have can only get you the results that you're already getting?
Yeah, but that takes away all my excuses, Matt.
That takes away all your reasonable reasons.
All my reasonable reasons are history if I believe that.
Right, but we were talking, you have a great story about this, where in your manufacturing business you had one focus and then it kind of morphed into a different focus. Tell us that
crazy.
story.
You know, I have mentioned, haven't I, that most of the things I've learned about business have been by accident?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Your best work is by accident.
my best work. Or by other people requiring change that we had to figure out how to implement.
That's
you know,
good.
Manufacturing business, of course, my history for years and years and years. Done a lot of other things, but core business for more than 20 years was in manufacturing. And we had developed, all of the standard manufacturing thought processes. How do you produce at the lowest possible cost? How do you create efficiencies, which in a lot of cases matches up or pairs up, setup times, staging times, material purchase quantities with production numbers. And so, you might have a series of parts where it's like, well, if we're going to set this machine up and it takes 4 hours to set it up, we're going to run 10,000 parts. That was the process. We were being lean, we were being efficient, we were trying to do all these things right. Well, then I had a customer who we did a lot of business with who wanted us to commit within a new contract and project that we were doing for them, that we had to commit. We were building a bunch of the components, and we were assembling the products, shipping the products. I mean, it was a holistic operation. They wanted us to commit to a 1-week forecast schedule. They would show us 90 days in advance, even a year forecast, but they'd show us at 90 days, but it gradually kept changing. We want them as manufacturers, we want them to lock in at 90 days.
Right.
That's it. We know what we're going to produce. We make the right orders. No, up until the last week, it could change, and then it became fixed. It had to be produced. Well, you can imagine how much havoc that wreaked in our minds with the idea that, wait a minute, you want 500 of those, we can run 10,000 of them, but we can't run 500.
Right.
We just can't do it.
Right.
But in the changing environment, this whole idea of mass customization, the ability of a manufacturer to respond to the needs of their customer, who were responding to the needs of their customers through distribution, became and has become, we've learned this through Amazon now, but this was a longer time ago, has become more about how do we be lean in what we produce and produce only what we need, so we're not inventorying a bunch of parts and on and on and on. Well, I had to make a decision, Matt. I needed a different outcome, and this was a huge contract, and I mean huge contract. It was more than $20 million annually for this contract. And so at the time, my decision was, yes, I want to make this customer happy, so I'm going to have to shift how we think. But I agreed to the contract knowing that it was going to take a different outcome. Well, I didn't know what that meant yet. I didn't know what the results that we were going to have to do would mean to our team. But I personally first had to start by shifting my thinking about what was important. What was important to us was that we were going to make those forecasts. Right. We were going to ship on time. We were going to be the absolute best supplier that they had, and that was the commitment. My focus had to shift so that I could develop the necessary patterns in order to get the results. That wasn't an easy thing. But even more, you want to hear the really hard part. Mm-hmm. It's sitting in the front office. It's not so hard to just say, "Hey, let's just change how we're doing that." That's awfully easy. But now you have departments that have been geared towards these manufacturing economies, the economies of scale, right, how they order, everything they do, and they're pushing back. That doesn't work. It doesn't work for us. We'll lose money. Ultimately what happened, if I can just cut to the chase, ultimately what happened was that change in focus had to be universal. I could change my mind, but I had to build the team. Right. We had to understand and together join in on these new results that we were after. And ultimately, by focusing differently, we developed ways to make it happen. We developed faster ways to do setups. We developed adapter plates that would let us set up products that used to take a long time. We could set them up in 20% of the time. We would have never developed those things. We worked with our suppliers to develop material quantities and forecasting that allowed us to, a lot of things that a lot of you have done before. But the truth is, until we shifted the results we were determined to get, we would have never changed our focus. Until we changed our focus, we couldn't have become a world-class manufacturer for that product.
And there's an interesting thing that we just want to highlight. So you had a customer that needed a just-in-time model, and you had to react very quickly, almost on a weekly basis. And you had an infrastructure, a company already set up that was geared towards a long-term focus in producing things efficiently. And everybody thought, there's no way.
It can't be done.
It can't be done.
It just can't be done.
But the end of the
Our business is different, by the way. Our business is just different. I mean, I know.
No. Everybody out there, their business, it's not like this at all.
That's right.
But an interesting thing happened, you told me, was that you ended up solving some problems that seemed unsolvable.
That's right.
And although the focus was not efficiency anymore, you achieved a greater level of efficiency.
We achieved a massive level of efficiency.
Yeah.
And again, it's just everything until something changes, nothing changes.
Yeah. Well, let's unpack what happened there, because
Sure.
I think that our goal is to give you something that's transferable and simple and repeatable today. And so let's talk about what happened. You mentioned it a little bit already, but you had basically, whether it was by accident or on purpose, you had embraced these laws, what we're calling the laws of traction. So to get change, you have to have traction.
That's right.
And to get traction, you need to obey these laws. It's not like gravity, what goes up must come down. And in this case, whatever you focus on, that's the first law, the law of focus. Whatever you focus on tends to be the thing you're going to do routinely. So the next law, the second law, is the law of patterns, right? And then whatever you're doing routinely is going to dictate the results that you get.
Can't help it.
Okay, so if we have three laws, which is the law of focus, the law of patterns, and the law of results, what's the best way, in your opinion, if you had to start at one of those laws, focus or pattern or results, which one would you start with, knowing what you know today?
You know what, Matt? Most people don't spend, like me, they spend more time figuring out who their barber's going to be, than they do what the results that they really want out of either their life or a particular business or relationship or anything. They don't spend time understanding. I remember some of the first conversations you and I had where you asked me questions that required me to spend days to answer them, and they were all about how would you define success? What results are you looking for? When we give those only token acknowledgement, well, we want to make money. That's just not good enough. I mean, that's ridiculous to think that saying we want to make money defines a result that's going to create patterns, that's going to create focus, which would have any meaningful impact on the world or your business or your team or you. So I think that until we understand the results that we're focused on achieving, we can't even begin to talk about how we would achieve them through focus.
Because here's the thing, you mentioned something really important to me, which was, okay, if you chose the results that you want, what if it was incompatible? Explain that a little bit. What if it was incompatible?
Well, you mean, like, I'm assuming you mean is I've chosen some results, but I have no idea. In our current environment, there's no way to achieve them.
Right.
I mean, is it wrong to set a goal or desire an outcome that you don't have any idea how you could achieve?
On the surface, I would argue no. But
yeah, it's easy to talk theory, right?
Yeah,
but that's not how we function. When we start talking about something that we immediately just think it's out of the scope of our imagination, believe me, when we started talking about how to produce and respond to a weekly forecast in our business with hundreds of SKUs that were involved in it. It was impossible. It didn't seem impossible. It was impossible. But by the time we ultimately achieved it, which we were fortunate, we had to build tooling, we had to set all these processes in motion, and they had to intersect at a timeline with ramping up the product. So we had a little bit of integration time. But you know what the most time took was just us to wrap our minds around it, and for the time that it took for our team to finally come around. I'm always amazed by the conversations you have about change. And people immediately, whether they say it exactly this way or not, people will immediately, well, that's just not the way it is in my business,
Right.
in our career. You don't understand this area of whatever. It's just not possible, And when we start out that way, I just want you to understand that's normal. I mean, that's really pretty normal. When we start out that way, in fact, I would argue that if we're not seeking results that currently are impossible, then you need bigger results. You need bigger dreams. You need bigger and more intense focus. And one of these days, we're going to talk about the fact that you also need a very small incremental strategy in order to get that done. So I want results. I want to target results. I want to hone in on results. I want to taste results. I want to feel them. I want to smell them. I want them to be so ridiculous that they might actually make a difference if we achieved them.
So if we were to take this and put it down to what we call traction items, how do you actually use these three laws to your advantage? So the law of focus, the law of patterns, and the law of results. They all flow together. They all work together. So the first area that we could apply this in terms of traction items, these are things you can take away, write down, revisit the video right about now to go ahead and implement it. And the first one we're going to assert is to look at your leadership. So the first thing that we would want everyone to do is to gain a commitment to yourself. And you had to go through this too, Greg.
Yeah, it's one thing to sit in the front office and make those kind of decisions. Until you can grow enough and pursue this mindset enough as a leader, you're not going to be able to unite a team behind something meaningful. And by the way, you're never going to unite a team unless you're stretching them beyond what they're capable to do. You're never going to even find out what they're capable of until we're all achieving something that's impossible. I get off on that tangent again, but absolutely, that's the first thing you got to do is determine me as a leader. Who am I going to become and what am I willing to pursue? What's the outcome, whether it's circumstantial, situational, or whether it's cultural? What's the outcome I'm really looking for?
And when you start to meet resistance, as change naturally has some resistance involved in it, use these same three questions. What am I focused on? The law of focus. What am I routinely doing? The law of patterns. And then what results are those patterns getting? So this becomes a very easy leadership tool you can ask yourself any day, all day.
That's awesome.
So the next thing is organizational. How are we going to apply these three laws or leverage them in our organizations? And one of the things that we would suggest is that you would look at what results you've been pursuing so far. There's probably momentum behind those results. And Greg, I think you're going to have to get a little bit in your face on this one and ask a question, whether they want something or not.
Yeah, you really want change, it's going to be painful. I mean, I just talk to people who feign this idea of change, but they really have no intention of creating change because from their perspective, it would be too painful. The status quo is just too easy to maintain. It's a painful process. So you got to ask yourself, do I want change or am I just talking about change? Because if you're just willing to talk about it and not take action, you're never going to have change.
So you look at your organization, you look at what results you've been currently pursuing, you say, do I really want change? If I do, I'm going to have to look at what am I focused on as an organization, what are we pursuing in terms of patterns, and what results is that getting us? So then the final thing is about teams. We talked about your leadership using these laws, your organization using these laws, and now your team. So what do you think you need to do to use these three laws in a team setting?
Well, obviously the leader is the one who casts vision in the team, but the leader rarely is the one who needs to find out, who needs to define the strategic implementation. They got to be a part of it, Matt, but they cannot dictate change. We cannot dictate change. Every situation I've ever been in where teams were involved in change, I was looking for buy-in through a clear vision, and then it took time.
Yep.
I just had to give them time to settle into this idea. I had to continue, first off, with my focus, stating my focus, repeating the patterns of my focus, integrating it into every discussion, into every opportunity that I had to speak into the outcome that I was looking for. And before long, that momentum began to get traction. It's like the flywheel effect. But if you expect that any team is going to immediately engage with your idea, then you probably have a team that's weak. You probably have a team that's a bunch of yes people who are going to say yes, but never do anything. I think you should expect resistance, and you should embrace resistance and use that resistance for the creativity that's necessary to achieve the results you want.
Exactly. So Greg, that's great advice about team. Make it clear to your team and leave time for them to adopt this new focus. And so the 3 laws again are the law of focus, the law of patterns, and the law of results. And with that, you can use those 3 questions to cause change in your leadership in 60 seconds or less.